The lab mixed up my results with my father's. It saved my life. I was scrolling through Netflix when Dr. Martinez called at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, which should have been my first red flag. Doctors don't call that late unless someone's dying. Sarah, I need you to come in first thing tomorrow morning. There's been a mix-up with your blood work from last week. My stomach dropped. I'd gone in for routine labs, the boring annual physical stuff that my trust fund requires to keep the monthly disbursements coming. At 28, I was finally getting my act together after years of art school and failed gallery dreams, and the last thing I needed was some health crisis derailing my plans to open my own studio. What kind of mix-up? I asked, muting the TV. I'd rather discuss this in person. Can you be here at 8? I barely slept. WebMD became my worst enemy as I spiraled through every possible diagnosis. Cancer. Diabetes. Some rare genetic disorder that would explain why I'd been feeling so exhausted lately, why my hair had been thinning, why I kept getting these weird stomach cramps that Dad insisted were just stress from my artistic temperament. The next morning, Dr. Martinez looked like he hadn't slept either. He kept adjusting his glasses and shuffling papers on his desk before finally sliding a lab report across to me. Sarah, these results show dangerously elevated levels of arsenic in your bloodstream. We ran the test 3 times to be sure. The room started spinning. Arsenic? Like poison arsenic? The levels suggest chronic exposure over several months. Have you been in contact with any industrial chemicals? Old paint? Pesticides? I shook my head, trying to process this information. But you said there was a mix-up? Dr. Martinez pulled out another sheet. Initially, we thought these results belonged to your father. The lab tech, Monica Hendricks, flagged it when she saw the name similarity, David Chin versus Sarah Chin. She assumed the samples got switched because arsenic poisoning is more common in older patients who might have occupational exposure. So these are definitely mine? Yes. Your father's actual results are completely normal. Monica caught the error when she cross-referenced the patient ID numbers. I stared at the numbers on the page, 47 micrograms per liter. The normal range was listed as less than 10. My hands started shaking as Dr. Martinez explained treatment options, chelation therapy, the importance of identifying the source. But I was barely listening because one thought kept ricocheting through my head. For the past 4 months, the only consistent thing in my daily routine had been the morning smoothies Dad made for me. He'd started this new health kick right after Mom's funeral, insisting we both needed to take better care of ourselves. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, he'd knock on my apartment door. I lived in the converted garage behind his house, with a perfectly blended mix of spinach, berries, and what he called his secret ingredient vitamin powder. The exposure has to stop immediately, Dr. Martinez was saying. Any idea where it might be coming from? I nodded slowly, my mind racing. I think so. Can you give me copies of everything? Both sets of results? As I walked out of that office with the lab reports clutched in my hand, I realized that Monica Hendricks hadn't made an error at all. She'd saved my life. Now I just had to figure out how to save it permanently without letting Dad know I discovered his plan. I sat in my car outside Dr. Martinez's office for 20 minutes, staring at those lab reports until the numbers blurred together. 47 micrograms per liter. The technical proof that my father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd held me while I sobbed over Mom's casket just 6 months ago, was slowly murdering me. The smoothies. It had to be the smoothies. I drove home on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Dad's BMW was in the driveway, which meant he was probably in his study working on his investments. That's what he'd been calling his mysterious new business ventures since Mom died, the ones that required so many hushed phone calls and meetings with people I'd never met. I parked behind the main house instead of pulling into my usual spot by the garage apartment. I needed to think, and I couldn't do that with him potentially watching me through the kitchen window. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad, * making dinner tonight. Your favorite, Mom's lasagna recipe. 6 p.m. sharp *. The casual normalcy of it made my skin crawl. I typed back, * sounds perfect. Can't wait, *. As I hit send, another horrible thought crept in. When exactly had Dad started making those smoothies? I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through my photos, looking for any clues about timing. There, a picture from early February, me holding up one of his green concoctions with a grimacing emoji face. Dad's health kick begins, I'd captioned it. February 8th. Just 3 weeks after Mom's will was read. The will that left everything to Dad, except for my trust fund and a substantial life insurance policy that would revert to him if I died before 30. 2 years. He'd been planning to kill me over the course of 2 years, slowly enough that no one would suspect anything other than a tragic illness. I thought about all those doctor visits he'd insisted on when I started feeling sick. You're just like your mother, he'd said. Always ignoring symptoms until it's too late. He'd even driven me to Dr. Martinez's office himself for the blood work, chatting cheerfully with the receptionist while I filled out paperwork. Had he known Monica Hendricks would be handling the samples? Was this whole mix-up part of some larger plan I couldn't see yet? I needed to get inside that house and find evidence, but first I had to act normal. I walked to my apartment, unlocked the door, and immediately went to the kitchenette where I kept the leftover smoothie ingredients Dad had given me. For when you want to make your own, he'd said. The protein powder was in an unmarked container. The vitamin supplement was in a plain bottle with a handwritten label, B-complex plus iron. I photographed both, then carefully scooped samples into sandwich bags. If Dr. Martinez could test my blood, surely he could test these powders too. At 5:45 p.m., I walked to the main house with the lab reports hidden in my jacket pocket and my phone set to record. Dad was humming in the kitchen, the same off-key version of Blue Moon that Mom used to tease him about. There's my girl, he said, wrapping me in a hug that felt like a vice. You look tired. Everything okay with the doctor today? I smiled up at him, this man who'd read me bedtime stories and scared away monsters from under my bed, and lied through my teeth. Just routine stuff. Clean bill of health. His smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Just wonderful. Dinner was a masterclass in psychological torture, though I'm not sure which one of us was the victim. Dad served the lasagna with theatrical flourish, cutting perfect squares and going on about how he'd finally mastered Mom's bechamel sauce technique. I forced myself to eat, even though every bite tasted like cardboard and betrayal. You know, Sarah, I've been thinking, he said, twirling his fork through the cheese. Maybe it's time you moved back into the main house. That apartment is so isolated, and after what happened to Mrs. Patterson down the street. Mrs. Patterson. The wealthy widow who died suddenly last month of what her family thought was a stroke. Dad had mentioned her several times recently, always with this practiced sympathy that now made my stomach turn. What exactly happened to Mrs. Patterson? I asked carefully. Oh, you know how these things go. She'd been feeling poorly for months, fatigue, nausea, hair loss. Her daughter thought it was just old age, but then one day. He shook his head sadly. The human body is so fragile, especially when we don't take proper care of ourselves. The symptoms he listed were identical to mine. My hand trembled as I reached for my water glass. I actually ran into her daughter, Jennifer, at the grocery store yesterday, Dad continued. She mentioned something interesting about the medical bills. Apparently, Mrs. Patterson had been getting blood work done at Martinez's office too, and there was some confusion with the lab results right before she passed. Mix-ups, missing paperwork. Jennifer's thinking about filing a complaint. Ice flooded my veins. This wasn't just about me and some inheritance money. This was bigger. That's terrible, I managed. Lab mix-ups can be really dangerous. Exactly what I told Jennifer. These medical facilities need better oversight. Dad's eyes met mine across the table. Speaking of which, how did your appointment go today? I know you said everything was fine, but you seemed shaken when you came home. The recording app on my phone had been running for 37 minutes. I needed to be smart about this. Actually, there was something weird, I said, watching his face carefully. Dr. Martinez mentioned that the lab tech, Monica something, had flagged my results initially because she thought they might have been mixed up with another patient's. Dad's fork stopped moving. Mixed up how? She thought my blood work might have belonged to someone else with a similar name. But then she double-checked and confirmed they were definitely mine. I took a sip of water. Dr. Martinez seemed really grateful that she caught the potential error. Said she prevented what could have been a serious misdiagnosis. The color drained from Dad's face. He set down his fork with deliberate precision and reached for his wine glass. Monica Hendricks, he said quietly. That's her name. The lab technician. My blood turned to concrete. I hadn't mentioned her last name. Dr. Martinez had only told me her full name once, in passing. There was no way Dad should have known it unless. How do you know her last name? I asked. Dad's smile was different now. Colder. The mask was slipping. Lucky guess, he said. Monica's a family friend. Has been for years. Your mother and I used to have her and her husband over for barbecues when you were little. Don't you remember? I didn't remember any Monica Hendricks at our family barbecues. But I did remember Dad getting a phone call around 2 p.m. today, right after I would have left Dr. Martinez's office. I remembered hearing him through the thin walls, his voice sharp and urgent. What do you mean she knows? Fix this. Now. Small world, I said, forcing another bite of lasagna. Very small, Dad agreed. Monica's always been helpful with family matters. The way he said helpful made my skin crawl. I was sitting across from a man who'd orchestrated multiple murders, and he was starting to realize his latest victim was no longer as clueless as he thought. My phone buzzed against my leg, a text message. Dad's eyes flicked down to where the sound came from, and I saw something predatory flash across his face. Aren't you going to check that? He asked. Could be important. I pulled out my phone with hands that I willed to stay steady. The message was from Dr. Martinez. Sarah, I need you to call me immediately. Monica Hendricks hasn't worked at our lab for 3 months. We need to discuss your results. The blood roared in my ears. I looked up to find Dad watching me intently, his wine glass suspended halfway to his lips. Everything all right, sweetheart? I forced my expression to remain neutral even as my mind raced. Monica Hendricks didn't work at the lab. So who had called Dr. Martinez about the mix-up? Who had access to both mine and Dad's blood samples? And why was Dad so familiar with someone who apparently didn't exist where she was supposed to? Just Emma asking about weekend plans, I lied, setting the phone face down on the table. Nothing urgent. Dad relaxed slightly, but I caught him glancing at my phone screen's reflection in the window behind me. The paranoia was mutual now. You know, Dad, I've been meaning to ask you something, I said, cutting another piece of lasagna I had no intention of eating. That vitamin powder you've been giving me, where did you get it? I want to order more for myself. Oh, that. He waved dismissively. Some health food store downtown. I don't remember the name, you know how those places all look the same. Was it the one on Maple Street? Next to the dry cleaner? Could be. Why? I drove past there yesterday and it was closed. Big out of business sign in the window. Looked like it had been empty for months. The lie came easily, but Dad's reaction was immediate. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and he reached for his wine again, a tell I remembered from childhood when he was trying to buy time to think. Must be thinking of a different place, he said finally. There are so many of these supplement stores now. I nodded like that made perfect sense, but mentally I was cataloging every inconsistency. Monica Hendricks who didn't work where she claimed to. Vitamin powder from a non-existent store. Mrs. Patterson's mysterious illness that mirrored my own symptoms. The phone call this afternoon that Dad thought I hadn't heard. My phone buzzed again. This time I glimpsed the preview. Sarah, this is urgent. Monica Hendricks was arrested last year for. Dad's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. I'll get dessert started. Your mother's tiramisu recipe, I've been practicing. As he moved toward the kitchen, I quickly read the rest of Dr. Martinez's message. Monica Hendricks was arrested last year for falsifying lab reports at her previous job. She's been working under an assumed name. I'm calling the police. Don't consume anything you haven't prepared yourself. Too late for that advice. I'd just eaten half a plate of Dad's cooking, and my stomach was already starting to cramp in a way that was becoming all too familiar. But this time, the nausea might have been from fear rather than poison. From the kitchen came the sound of Dad opening and closing cabinets with more force than necessary. Then his voice, low and urgent, "It's blown." She knows. No, I can't wait until morning. Yes, I'm sure. I had maybe 5 minutes before he came back with dessert and whatever else he was planning. The recording on my phone had been running for an hour and 12 minutes, but I needed more than his vague admissions and my own suspicions. I needed proof that would hold up in court, assuming I lived long enough to see one. Moving as quietly as possible, I stood and walked toward his study, my heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it from the kitchen. Dad's study was exactly as I remembered from childhood, dark wood paneling, the smell of leather and old books, his massive mahogany desk positioned to face the door so he could see anyone coming. What I didn't remember was the locked filing cabinet in the corner, or the laptop that was currently open and displaying what looked like a spreadsheet. I had maybe 3 minutes before he'd wonder where I went. The laptop screen showed columns of names, dates, and dollar amounts. My breath caught as I recognized some of them. Mrs. Patterson, $847,000. Dorothy Williamson, $1.2 million. James Chen, my grandfather, who died 2 years ago of what we thought was natural causes. $2.3 million. At the bottom of the list, Sarah Chen, $4.7 million. Status, in progress. Timeline, 18 to 24 months. Notes, reduced dosage, symptoms too obvious. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The spreadsheet had tabs at the bottom labeled targets, financials, and M. Hendricks. I clicked on the last one. Monica Hendricks wasn't just a lab tech. According to the documents, she was a former nurse who'd lost her license for drug theft 3 years ago. Dad had been paying her $10,000 per month to work under a false identity at Martinez's office, falsifying blood work and manipulating results to cover their tracks. But the most chilling part was a series of email exchanges between them. Asterisk David, Sarah's getting suspicious about the smoothies. Suggesting we switch to cooking method asterisk. Asterisk Monica, risky. Food poisoning symptoms too obvious. What about the apartment water supply, asterisk. Asterisk David, too traceable. I think we need to accelerate timeline, asterisk. Asterisk Monica, current dosage killing her too slowly anyway. Patterson took 8 months, but Sarah's younger, stronger. Up the amount, asterisk. Asterisk David, fine. But if she goes to another doctor, asterisk. Asterisk Monica, won't happen. I'm monitoring all her medical records. Any other labs ordered, I'll know, asterisk. The timestamp on that last exchange was from this morning, 2:47 p.m. Right after my appointment with Dr. Martinez. From the kitchen came the sound of Dad's voice again. What do you mean she's not answering? Find her. Now. I quickly photographed everything I could, my fingers fumbling with the phone's camera. There were bank records showing payments to Monica, insurance documents for his other victims, even a contact list labeled future opportunities, wealthy elderly people from Mom's charity committees. The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew Dad's habits. He'd always hidden spare keys in the same places. I checked under the desk lamp base and found a small silver key taped to the bottom. Inside the cabinet were physical files for each victim. Mrs. Patterson's folder contained copies of her will, medical records, and a handwritten timeline. Month 1 to 2, establish trust. Month 3 to 5, begin treatment. Month 6 to 7, increase symptoms. Month 8, final phase. My own file was twice as thick. Photos of me going about my daily routine, leaving my apartment, at the grocery store, meeting friends for coffee. He'd been watching me for months, documenting my habits, my schedule, my relationships. But the most horrifying discovery was a life insurance policy I'd never seen before. Dad had taken out additional coverage on me 6 months ago, bringing the total death benefit to nearly $8 million. The application was forged with my signature. Sarah? Where'd you go, sweetheart? His footsteps were moving toward the hallway. I shoved the files back into the cabinet, locked it, and replaced the key. The laptop was still open, but I couldn't risk closing it if he'd left it running deliberately. Just using the bathroom, I called back, slipping out of the study and heading toward the guest bathroom. Dessert's ready, he called. Come try this tiramisu. I added a special ingredient just for you. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with terror, but I forced myself to smile. I had evidence now, photos, recordings, documentation of a conspiracy that had killed at least 4 people. But I was still trapped in a house with a man who just announced he was ready to serve me my final meal. I flushed the toilet and ran water in the sink, buying myself 30 more seconds to think. The photos on my phone were evidence, but they wouldn't matter if I didn't survive the night. Dad's voice drifted down the hallway, artificially cheerful as he called out details about the tiramisu, how he'd used Mom's special espresso blend, how the mascarpone was perfectly whipped. When I returned to the dining room, he'd already plated 2 perfect squares of dessert, each garnished with a delicate dusting of cocoa powder. My portion looked slightly different. The cocoa was more concentrated on one side, like something had been mixed in unevenly. It looks amazing, I said, sitting back down. Mom would be so proud that you finally mastered her recipe. Dad's smile was warm, paternal, completely at odds with the spreadsheet I just photographed. She always said the secret was in the timing. Too much patience and the flavors don't develop properly. Too little, and everything falls apart. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. I picked up my fork and pretended to take a bite, but at the last second, I fumbled it deliberately, letting the piece fall back onto the plate. Sorry, I'm still feeling a little queasy from earlier, I said. Maybe I should stick to water for now. Something flickered behind Dad's eyes. Irritation. Calculation. You barely touched your dinner either, he said. I'm starting to worry about you, Sarah. This isn't like you. I know, I've just been off lately. All that stress from the gallery applications, you know? Actually, I don't think it's stress. Dad leaned back in his chair, studying me with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. I think you've been lying to me about your doctor's appointment today. My blood turned to ice, but I forced myself to look confused rather than terrified. What do you mean? Dr. Martinez called me an hour ago, Dad said quietly. Seems there was some confusion about your lab results. He wanted to discuss your care plan with me, as your emergency contact. The trap was closing, but I still had one advantage. He didn't know how much I discovered in his study. I needed to keep him talking while I figured out how to get out of this house alive. What did he say? He said Monica Hendricks doesn't work for his practice. Never has. Dad's voice was conversational, but his hands were perfectly still on the table. He also said someone called him this morning claiming to be Monica, someone with detailed knowledge of your blood work and mine. I swallowed hard. That's weird. Very weird, Dad agreed. Almost like someone's been impersonating a medical professional. Someone with access to lab equipment and testing materials. Someone who might have reasons for manipulating medical records. He stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, and returned with a bottle of wine I hadn't seen before. The label was expensive, imported, the kind Mom used to save for special occasions. I thought we might need something stronger than water for this conversation, he said, pouring himself a generous glass. He moved to pour mine, but I covered it with my hand. I'm really not feeling well enough for alcohol. Sarah. His voice carried a warning now. I think we need to have an honest discussion about what you learned today. My phone, still recording in my pocket, captured every word as my father, the man who'd taught me to drive, who'd walked me to school when I was afraid of the neighborhood dogs, began to methodically dismantle the life I'd built on lies. The question is, he continued, swirling the wine in his glass, what are we going to do about it? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Dad's wine glass caught the light from the chandelier, Mom's favorite fixture that she'd insisted on installing despite his protests about the cost. Now he was using her dining room to orchestrate my murder. I don't understand what you mean, I said, though we both knew I was past the point of playing dumb convincingly. Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder, placing it on the table next to the untouched tiramisu. My heart stopped. He'd been recording too. I started keeping audio records of our conversations 3 months ago, he said matter-of-factly. Initially for my own protection, in case you ever tried to claim I was unfit to handle Mom's estate. But they'd become quite useful for documenting your mental decline. He pressed play. My own voice filled the room, but the words were wrong, twisted. Can't take it anymore, Dad. The headaches, the nausea. Sometimes I think about just ending it all. That's not what I said. The words came out as a whisper. Audio editing software is remarkably sophisticated these days, Dad continued conversationally. Amazing what you can do with enough patience and the right equipment. Monica's been helping me compile quite a collection of your concerning statements. He pressed another button. This time it was my voice saying, don't want to be a burden anymore. Maybe everyone would be better off if I just disappeared. I remembered that conversation. I'd been talking about moving out of the apartment, about not wanting to be a burden financially while I got my art career started. But spliced together with different fragments, it sounded like a suicide confession. You sick bastard, I breathed. Dad's expression didn't change. Sarah, you've been struggling with severe depression since your mother's death. Everyone's seen it, your friends, the people at the gallery, Dr. Martinez. When they find you tomorrow morning, these recordings will provide important context about your state of mind. Tomorrow morning? He gestured to my untouched dessert. The tiramisu contains enough potassium cyanide to kill you within 20 minutes. Tasteless when mixed properly with cocoa and espresso. You'll simply go to sleep here at the table, and I'll find you when I come to check on you in the morning. My phone was still recording in my pocket, capturing his confession, but that wouldn't matter if I was dead. I needed to keep him talking while I figured out an escape route. How many others? I asked. How many people have you killed? Dad consulted his watch, 8:47 p.m. Counting you? 12 over the past 3 years. Your grandfather was actually the first, though I didn't plan it that way initially. When I saw how easy it was to manipulate his medication levels, well, it opened up possibilities. Mom knew, didn't she? For the first time that evening, Dad's composure cracked slightly. Your mother was becoming suspicious about your grandfather's death. She'd started asking questions about the inheritance, about my new business ventures. I couldn't let her jeopardize everything I'd built. The room spun. You killed Mom too. Car accidents are so much simpler than poisoning, he said quietly. Brake line failure. Tragic, but mechanical problems happen. The insurance company never even investigated. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the table. 6 months. I'd been grieving my mother for 6 months, letting this monster comfort me, never knowing he was the reason she was dead. The smoothie started 3 weeks later, I said, pieces falling into place. I needed time to establish her declining health pattern first. A few doctor visits for fatigue and stomach issues. Getting you accustomed to letting me take care of you. Dad stood up again, this time walking to the window overlooking my apartment. You made it so easy, Sarah. Always trusting, always grateful for family support during your difficult time. That's when I saw the headlights pulling into our driveway. The headlights swept across the dining room wall as a car pulled up behind Dad's BMW. Dad cursed under his breath and moved to peer through the curtains. Monica, he said, his voice tight with irritation. She wasn't supposed to come here tonight. This was my chance. While Dad was distracted, I carefully slid my phone out and sent a quick text to the last number that had called me, Dr. Martinez. Just an address and help before shoving it back into my pocket. A car door slammed outside, followed by the sharp click of heels on our brick walkway. Dad straightened his tie and walked toward the front door, but not before turning back to me with a smile that made my skin crawl. Eat your dessert, Sarah. We'll finish our conversation when I get back. The moment he left the dining room, I grabbed both plates and scraped the tiramisu into the napkin on my lap. The cocoa powder left dark streaks on the white linen, evidence, if I survived long enough to present it to anyone. I could hear Dad's voice at the front door, low and urgent. What are you doing here? We agreed you'd handle this remotely. Monica Hendricks had a smoker's rasp that carried through the house. Your daughter's doctor called the real lab. They're asking questions about me, David. This whole thing is falling apart. I crept toward the hallway, staying close to the wall where the floorboards were less likely to creak. Through the gap in the door, I could see Monica, a thin woman in her 40s with bleached hair and nervous hands that wouldn't stop moving. Martinez doesn't know anything concrete, Dad was saying. We stick to the plan. The plan was to keep this quiet for another 6 months. Now we've got a doctor asking about forged credentials, lab supervisors wanting to review quality control procedures, and your daughter looking at me like she knows something. Monica lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. I think we should cut our losses and run. Run where? You think I'm abandoning 3 years of work because you're getting paranoid? Dad's voice carried the same controlled anger I remembered from childhood arguments with Mom. Sarah will be dead by morning. Martinez might suspect something, but he can't prove anything without her testimony. And what about the others? Mrs. Patterson's daughter has been calling the lab all week. She wants to exhume the body, David. If they run toxicology tests, they won't find anything. Arsenic degrades in soil within months, you know that. Monica took a long drag from her cigarette. What if your daughter already talked to someone? What if she told friends about the test results? She didn't. Dad sounded completely certain. Sarah's always been private about medical issues. Embarrassed by weakness. She barely told anyone when her mother died, just posted some generic message on social media and disappeared for weeks. He was right, and I hated that he knew me well enough to predict my behavior. But he was also wrong about one crucial thing: I had told someone. The text to Dr. Martinez was probably already being read, hopefully by someone who understood the urgency. I still don't like it, Monica was saying. Too many variables now. What if we just disappear tonight? I've got contacts in Mexico who can set us up with new identities. With what money? Dad's laugh was bitter. Sarah's insurance payout is $4.7 million. The Patterson estate cleared $1.2 last month. We're so close to having enough to retire permanently. Blood money isn't worth anything if we're in prison. We won't be in prison if you do your job correctly. Dad's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. I've got recordings of Sarah confessing to suicidal thoughts. Her medical records show months of declining health. When they find her body tomorrow, it will look like she finally gave up fighting whatever illness was making her sick. Through the crack in the door, I watched Monica stub out her cigarette on Mom's antique side table. And if the autopsy shows cyanide? It won't. The compound I used metabolizes too quickly to detect unless they're specifically looking for it within hours of death. By tomorrow afternoon, it'll just look like cardiac arrest brought on by chronic arsenic poisoning. My blood went cold. He thought of everything: the timeline, the symptoms, the story that would satisfy investigators who weren't looking too closely. How many other families had grieved over natural deaths that were actually carefully orchestrated murders? Fine, Monica said finally. But this is the last one. After tonight, I want my money and I want out. Agreed. Though I might have one more job for you first. Dad glanced toward the dining room. I need you to help me stage the scene properly. Make sure everything looks right when the paramedics arrive. They were walking back toward me. I had seconds to get back to the table and look natural, but my legs felt like concrete. The recording app on my phone showed 1 hour 47 minutes and 33 seconds, nearly 2 hours of evidence, assuming anyone ever found it. I made it back to my chair just as Dad returned with Monica behind him. She looked me up and down with the clinical detachment of someone evaluating livestock. She doesn't look that sick, Monica observed. Arsenic poisoning can be deceiving, Dad replied smoothly. Victims often appear relatively normal right up until the end. Monica pulled out a small leather case from her purse, the kind used to carry medical instruments. Well, let's make sure there's no room for error this time. Monica opened her leather case with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Inside were small glass vials, syringes, and what looked like blood testing equipment, a portable lab setup that could fit in a purse. The beauty of potassium cyanide, she said, pulling on latex gloves, is that it mimics cardiac arrest almost perfectly. But we need to make sure she ingests enough to guarantee the outcome. Dad nodded toward my untouched dessert. She's been refusing to eat all evening. Claims she feels sick. Smart girl. Monica's smile was cold as she looked at me. But not smart enough, apparently. Did you really think we wouldn't notice you snooping around the study earlier? My heart stopped. They'd known I was in there the entire time. Dad pulled out his phone and showed me a security camera app. I had cameras installed last month, motion activated. Got some lovely footage of you photographing my laptop and going through the filing cabinet. He scrolled through thumbnail images of me hunched over his desk. Very thorough investigation, I'll give you that. Which means, Monica continued, loading a syringe with clear liquid, we need to accelerate our timeline. Can't have you sharing those photos with anyone. I bolted. My chair crashed backward as I sprinted toward the kitchen, muscle memory from childhood games of hide-and-seek driving me toward the back door. But Dad had anticipated this. I heard the electronic beep of the security system engaging, locking down all the exits. Sarah, don't make this harder than it needs to be, Dad called out, his footsteps unhurried behind me. The house is sealed. Motion sensors, deadbolts on timers. Even if you break a window, the neighbors are too far away to hear you scream. I grabbed a knife from the butcher block, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Monica appeared in the kitchen doorway, syringe in hand, blocking my path to the living room. Sedative, she explained conversationally. Much easier than trying to force-feed you poison. You'll just go to sleep, and when you wake up, well, you won't. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text message. Dad's eyes flicked toward the sound. Give me the phone, Sarah. No. The knife trembled in my grip. Give me the phone, or Monica will inject you with enough midazolam to put you in a coma before the cyanide even matters. Another buzz. Then another. Someone was trying to reach me repeatedly. Dad lunged forward and grabbed my wrist, twisting until I dropped the knife. It clattered across the tile floor as Monica moved in with the syringe. But before she could reach me, the house phone started ringing. Then my cell phone. Then Dad's phone. What the hell, Monica started to say, but she was interrupted by a loud banging on the front door. Police. Open up. The color drained from Dad's face. That's impossible. No one knew you were here tonight. More banging, followed by a voice I recognized. Sarah. Are you in there? This is Dr. Martinez. Relief flooded through me. The text message had gotten through. Somehow, Dr. Martinez had convinced the police to do a welfare check. Back door, Monica hissed, grabbing Dad's arm. We can still get to the car. But Dad was staring at something on his phone screen, his face going pale. Monica, look at this. She glanced at his phone and cursed. How is that possible? What? I demanded, still backed against the counter. Dad turned the screen toward me. It was a news article, timestamped just 20 minutes ago. Local lab technician arrested in medical fraud investigation. Below the headline was Monica's photo, her real photo, with her real name, Monica Hendricks, wanted in connection with falsified lab reports and suspected involvement in several suspicious deaths across 3 states. You've been under investigation this whole time, I breathed. The banging on the front door intensified, followed by the sound of the electronic locks disengaging. Dr. Martinez's voice carried through the house, override codes from the security company. Sarah, where are you? Dad grabbed Monica's syringe and pointed it at me like a weapon. This ends now, one way or another. But Monica was already moving toward the kitchen window, panic overriding whatever loyalty she'd felt toward her partner. I'm not going down for this, David. You're on your own. She smashed the window with a rolling pin and started climbing through, leaving Dad alone with me and the sound of footsteps rushing through his house, footsteps that meant rescue was finally, impossibly close. Dad's hand shook as he held the syringe, his eyes darting between me and the kitchen doorway where voices were getting closer. The broken window let in cold air and the distant sound of police radios crackling in the driveway. Sarah. Police. Where are you? Dr. Martinez's voice echoed from the living room. In here. I screamed, just as Dad lunged toward me. He caught my arm, the syringe inches from my shoulder, when Detective Rodriguez rounded the corner with his weapon drawn. Drop it. Now. Dad froze, the needle hovering near my skin. I could smell his cologne mixed with sweat and desperation, the same scent that used to comfort me when I had nightmares as a child. She's my daughter, Dad said, his voice eerily calm. This is a family medical emergency. She's having a psychotic episode. The hell I am. I twisted away from him, the syringe clattering to the floor. He's been poisoning me for months. Him and Monica Hendricks. Detective Rodriguez kept his gun trained on Dad while speaking into his radio. Suspect in custody, victim is safe. We need paramedics and a hazmat team for potential poisoning evidence. Dr. Martinez appeared behind the detective, his face grim. Sarah, thank God. When you texted that address, I called 911 immediately. We've been investigating Monica Hendricks for weeks. Your case broke everything wide open. Monica went through the window, I said, pointing to the broken glass. She had syringes, medical equipment. They were going to make it look like cardiac arrest. Already got her, another voice called from outside. Tackled her in the backyard trying to climb the fence. Dad slumped against the counter, his carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. You don't understand what you're doing. Sarah's inheritance, it's not what you think. The money isn't even real. What are you talking about? I stared at him. Your trust fund, the life insurance policies, I've been borrowing against them for 3 years. Fake investments, offshore accounts that don't exist. When you died, the insurance payout would have covered what I stole, with enough left over to disappear. Dad's laugh was bitter and broken. But if you live, if they investigate the finances. The room spun. You mean I'm broke? Worse than broke. You're liable for the money I took from other people's estates. Mrs. Patterson's family, the Williamson Trust, I used your identity to guarantee investment schemes that were never real. Detective Rodriguez was writing everything down. Sir, you have the right to remain silent. It doesn't matter now, Dad interrupted. Monica kept records of everything. Bank transfers, forged documents, the whole operation. She was smarter than me, made sure I'd take the fall if we got caught. Dr. Martinez moved closer to examine my arm where Dad had grabbed me. Sarah, we need to get you to the hospital immediately. Based on your earlier blood work, you'll need chelation therapy to remove the arsenic from your system. How long do I have? I asked. With treatment? Full recovery is possible. But we need to move fast. He paused, looking at the broken tiramisu on the floor. What else did he try to give you tonight? The dessert. He said it had potassium cyanide. Detective Rodriguez called for the hazmat team again while Dr. Martinez examined the scattered remains of what should have been my last meal. Sarah, Dad said quietly as the detective handcuffed him. I need you to know, killing your mother wasn't part of the original plan. She found bank statements, started asking questions about missing money. I couldn't let her expose everything before I found a way to pay it back. Pay it back with my life, I said. He looked at me with something that might have been regret, if I was feeling generous. I never wanted it to go this far. The first few cases with Monica were supposed to be one-time things. Elderly people with no family, money that would just sit in probate for years. But then the amounts got bigger, and the risks got higher, and you decided murdering your own daughter was easier than admitting you're a thief. Dad had no answer for that. As Detective Rodriguez led him toward the front door, he turned back once more. The recording device on the table, that's not the only copy. Monica has backups of everything, including conversations that could implicate you as a willing participant. Even now, even caught red-handed with poison in his hand, he was still trying to manipulate me. Still trying to make me afraid. But for the first time in months, I wasn't. The paramedics arrived as Detective Rodriguez was loading Dad into the patrol car. I watched through the kitchen window as my father, the man who used to check for monsters under my bed, was read his rights under the same porch light where he'd taken my senior prom photos. Sarah, we need to get you to County General immediately, Dr. Martinez said, guiding me toward the ambulance. Your arsenic levels are still critically high, and if he gave you anything else tonight. I didn't eat the tiramisu, I said, showing him the napkin full of scraped dessert. But I had dinner. Lasagna, salad, water. He bagged the evidence carefully. We'll test everything. The good news is you're alert and coherent, which means whatever he put in the food wasn't immediately lethal. As we walked through the living room, I noticed something that made me stop cold. Dad's laptop was still open on his desk, but the screen was different now. Instead of the spreadsheet I'd photographed, it displayed a message, files encrypted. Access denied. He had a kill switch, I told Detective Rodriguez. The laptop wiped itself. The detective cursed under his breath. What about the photos you took? I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. The camera roll was empty. Every single photograph I'd taken of Dad's files, the bank records, the victim list, gone. That's impossible, Dr. Martinez said. Photos don't just disappear. Detective Rodriguez was already on his radio. I need a tech specialist at the Chen residence immediately. Suspect may have used remote access to delete evidence from victim's device. My stomach dropped. The security cameras. If Dad could monitor them remotely, he probably had access to my phone too. He's been tracking everything, my location, my messages, my photos. Which means he knows exactly what evidence you saw, the detective said grimly. And Monica Hendricks knows you can identify their other victims. Through the front window, I could see Monica in the back of another patrol car, her bleached hair wild and her makeup streaked. Even in handcuffs, she was talking animatedly to the officers, her hands gesturing as much as the restraints allowed. She's making a deal, I realized. Dad said she kept records of everything. She's going to trade information for a lighter sentence. Dr. Martinez checked his watch, 11:23 p.m. Sarah, we need to go. Your blood work showed severe organ stress, and every minute we delayed treatment. Wait. I turned to Detective Rodriguez. Dad mentioned other families. Mrs. Patterson's daughter, someone named Jennifer. She's been asking questions about the lab results. If Monica and Dad killed Mrs. Patterson, Jennifer deserves to know the truth. We'll contact all the potential victims' families, the detective assured me. But right now, your safety is the priority. As the paramedic helped me into the ambulance, I caught sight of my apartment behind the main house. The windows were dark, innocent looking. For 8 months, I'd lived there believing I was recovering from grief and starting over. Instead, I'd been a prisoner in a slow-motion execution, monitored and poisoned by the one person I trusted completely. Detective Rodriguez, I called out as he closed the ambulance door. There's something else. Dad mentioned that the money isn't real, that he's been using my identity for fraudulent investments. If I'm legally liable for his crimes. The detective's expression was grim. We'll sort out the financial mess later. Right now, let's focus on keeping you alive. As the ambulance pulled away, I watched my childhood home disappear into the darkness, crime scene tape fluttering in the porch light. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. Some secrets are worth killing for. Monica had found a way to message me even from police custody. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Dr. Martinez had been running tests for 3 hours while Detective Rodriguez paced by the window, fielding phone calls that seemed to bring worse news each time. Your chelation therapy is working, Dr. Martinez said, checking my 4 drip. Arsenic levels are dropping, but we caught some liver damage. You'll need monitoring for the next few weeks. What about Monica's message? I asked, showing him my phone again. How is she texting me from jail? Detective Rodriguez ended his latest call and turned to us, his face grim. She's not. Monica Hendricks was released 2 hours ago. My blood pressure monitor started beeping faster. What do you mean released? Her lawyer showed up with paperwork proving she's been working undercover for the FBI for the past 6 months. Apparently, they've been building a case against a network of medical fraud operations across multiple states. Rodriguez rubbed his temples. Your father was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The room tilted. So she's, what, a federal agent? More like a cooperating witness who got caught stealing drugs and agreed to infiltrate medical scam operations to avoid prison time. Rodriguez sat down heavily in the visitor's chair. The problem is, we can't tell where her undercover work ended and her actual criminal activity began. Dr. Martinez frowned. Are you saying she might not have been complicit in the poisonings? I'm saying it's complicated. The FBI claims they have recordings of her trying to talk your father out of escalating the timeline. They think she was gathering evidence, not actively participating in murder. My hands clenched into fists. I saw their emails. They were planning my death together. Those emails might have been Monica documenting your father's intentions for her FBI handlers. Rodriguez pulled out a tablet, showing me an official-looking document. According to this report, she's been wearing a wire for months, recording conversations with your father and other suspects in the network. The betrayal felt fresh and sharp, like a second poisoning. So while I was dying slowly, she was building her career on my suffering? Sarah, listen to me. Dr. Martinez moved closer, his voice gentle but urgent. Regardless of Monica's actual role, your father's guilt is undeniable. The FBI recordings prove he was planning to kill you. The physical evidence, the arsenic in your system, the cyanide in the tiramisu, supports attempted murder charges. My phone buzzed again. This time the message was from Dad's number, the storage unit on Maple Street, number 247. Everything Monica promised the FBI is there. She's been playing both sides. David. Detective Rodriguez leaned over to read the message. Your father's not supposed to have phone access. Unless someone's helping him, I said, my chest tightening. What if Monica really is still working with him? What if this FBI story is just another layer of the conspiracy? Rodriguez was already dialing his phone. I need a unit at the county jail to verify David Chen's location and communication access. What? When? His face went white. Sarah, your father was transferred to federal custody an hour ago. They're claiming jurisdiction over the case. The monitors around my bed started alarming as my heart rate spiked. They can't just take him. He tried to murder me. They can if Monica's testimony implicates him in federal crimes that supersede local charges. Rodriguez was typing frantically on his tablet. Medical fraud across state lines, insurance scams, money laundering, it all falls under federal jurisdiction. Dr. Martinez checked my 4, his jaw tight with anger. So what happens to Sarah? She's the victim here, but it sounds like she's about to become a footnote in some federal prosecutor's career-building case. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sarah, it's Monica. We need to talk. Don't hang up. Monica's voice was urgent, stripped of the cold calculation I'd heard in my father's dining room. I know you think I'm the enemy, but there are things you don't understand. Things that will get you killed if you don't listen. Detective Rodriguez was already signaling for a trace on the call. I kept Monica talking while Dr. Martinez adjusted my foredrip with hands that shook slightly. Where are you? I asked. Somewhere safe, which is more than I can say for you right now. Sarah, the FBI doesn't know everything. Your father had partners beyond me, people who've been watching this whole operation unfold. People who can't afford to let you testify. Through the hospital window, I could see the parking garage across the street. A black sedan had been parked on the third level for the past hour, its occupants invisible behind tinted windows. What partners? Dr. Martinez's practice isn't the only medical facility we infiltrated. There's a whole network, labs, insurance companies, estate lawyers. Your father was small time compared to what's really happening. Monica's breathing was labored, like she was walking fast. The storage unit he texted you about? It's a trap. They're waiting for you there. Detective Rodriguez grabbed his radio. I need units at 1247 Maple Street, storage facility. Possible ambush setup. Monica, if you're really trying to help me, turn yourself in, I said. Come to the hospital with your FBI handlers and explain everything. Her laugh was bitter. My FBI contact, Agent Stevens, died in a car accident yesterday morning. Very similar to what happened to your mother, brake line failure on a mountain road. The federal agents who picked up your father tonight? I've never seen them before in my life. My blood went cold. Dr. Martinez caught my expression and moved closer, checking my monitors as my heart rate spiked again. You're saying the FBI agents were fake? I'm saying someone with serious resources is cleaning house. They have your father, they're trying to lure you to that storage unit, and they've already eliminated the one federal agent who knew the full scope of the operation. Detective Rodriguez was speaking rapidly into his radio, coordinating with federal contacts to verify the legitimacy of Dad's transfer. But I could see the doubt creeping into his expression as he got pushback from every agency he called. Sarah, there's something else, Monica continued. The financial records your father showed on his laptop? The $8 million in debts, the fraudulent investments? That was theater for my benefit. Your trust fund is intact, in fact, it's worth considerably more than you know. What are you talking about? Your grandfather didn't just leave you money. He left you controlling interest in Chin Industries, a pharmaceutical company that your father has been using as a front for illegal drug trials. The arsenic poisoning wasn't just about killing you, it was about testing a delivery method for a new assassination technique. The room started spinning. I was a test subject? You and at least 12 other people over the past 2 years. Mrs. Patterson, the Williamson family, all those natural deaths, they were field trials for a poison that mimics chronic illness. Someone's been paying your father millions to perfect an untraceable murder method. Dr. Martinez grabbed my chart, his face pale. Sarah, I need to ask you something important. Besides the arsenic, have you experienced any unusual neurological symptoms? Memory gaps, disorientation, periods where time seemed to skip? I thought back to the past few months, the days I couldn't quite account for, the strange dreams that felt too vivid to be imagination. Maybe. Why? Because arsenic alone doesn't explain some of your test results. There are traces of synthetic compounds I've never seen before, experimental substances that aren't in any medical database. Monica's voice crackled through the phone. They're not just killing people, Sarah. They're documenting everything, dosages, delivery methods, time to death, autopsy results. You're not just a victim, you're data in the largest illegal pharmaceutical trial in history. Through the hospital room window, the black sedan was gone. In its place, a white van had appeared, parked directly across from the hospital entrance. Detective Rodriguez ended his radio conversation, his face grim. Sarah, we have a problem. The federal agents who transferred your father used valid credentials, but they were issued to agents who died in the line of duty over the past 6 months. So someone's using dead agents' identities? And they have your father in federal custody, which means we can't touch them without starting a jurisdictional war that could take weeks to resolve. Rodriguez moved to the window, studying the white van. Monica, if you're still listening, we need you to come in. You're the only witness who can verify what's really happening. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, I can't come to you. But I can give you an address where you'll find everything, the real financial records, the pharmaceutical trial data, evidence of who's been funding this operation. Meet me at 2247, Industrial Boulevard, Warehouse 7. Come alone, and come tonight. Absolutely not, Dr. Martinez said firmly. Sarah's not leaving this hospital until her treatment is complete. Then she'll die here, Monica replied. Because whoever took your father will be coming for her next, and a hospital room isn't going to protect her from people who can impersonate federal agents. The alarm started going off at 3:17 a.m. Not my medical monitors, those had been steady for hours while the chelation therapy worked to pull arsenic from my bloodstream. These were hospital-wide alarms, the kind that meant lockdown protocols were activating. Dr. Martinez burst through my door, his scrubs disheveled. Sarah, we need to move you. Now. What's happening? Fire in the East Wing, he said, but his eyes were on the window, not meeting mine. Standard evacuation procedure. Through the glass, I could see smoke billowing from the opposite side of the hospital complex. But I could also see something else. The white van from earlier was now parked directly below my window, and 3 figures in hospital scrubs were wheeling gurneys toward the service elevator. That's not a fire evacuation, I said, my mouth going dry. Those aren't real hospital staff. Detective Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his weapon drawn. Dr. Martinez, step away from the patient. What? I'm trying to help her. The fire was set deliberately. Someone wanted to create chaos and confusion. Rodriguez kept his gun trained on the doctor. Sarah, when did Dr. Martinez first call you about your lab results? My brain felt foggy from the medications, but I forced myself to think. Tuesday night. 11:47 p.m. And what did he say, exactly? That there'd been a mix-up with my blood work. That Monica Hendricks had caught an error. I trailed off as pieces clicked into place. But Monica told me tonight that she never worked at his practice. Dr. Martinez's shoulders sagged. Sarah, you don't understand the position they put me in. My daughter, they have my daughter. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You've been working with them this whole time. Not by choice. His voice cracked. They approached me 6 months ago. Said they needed a doctor who could manipulate test results, falsify medical records. When I refused, they showed me photos of Emma at her college campus. They knew her class schedule, her dorm room number, everything. Rodriguez moved closer, his weapon steady. Who's they, doctor? I never met them in person. Everything was done through encrypted messages and money transfers. But they knew details about my practice, my family, my financial situation, things only someone with serious surveillance capabilities could access. My phone buzzed. Monica's number again, the warehouse was a trap. They have your father and they're coming for you. Get out of that hospital now. Dr. Martinez, I said carefully, if they have your daughter, why are you helping them kill me? How does that get Emma back? His hands were shaking as he reached into his coat pocket. Instead of a weapon, he pulled out a photograph, a young woman with his eyes and my age, tied to a chair in what looked like a basement. They said if I could keep you sick long enough for their research to be complete, they'd let her go. The arsenic poisoning, the falsified lab results, it was all supposed to buy them time to perfect their formulations. What research? Rodriguez demanded. Targeted assassination drugs. Poisons that can be programmed to activate based on specific genetic markers, dietary triggers, even emotional stress levels. Dr. Martinez wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Sarah's grandfather developed the theoretical framework before he died. Her father has been field testing the applications. The room went silent except for the distant wail of fire alarms. Through the window, I could see the figures in scrubs had entered the hospital through the service entrance. They're in the building, I whispered. Rodriguez grabbed his radio. This is Detective Rodriguez at County General. I need immediate backup and a federal task force. We have a kidnapping situation connected to pharmaceutical terrorism. The response crackled back. Detective Rodriguez, this is Agent Williams, FBI. We're already en route. Maintain your position and do not let the subject leave that room. Rodriguez's face went white. Sarah, I never called for federal backup. Dr. Martinez dropped the photograph and pulled a syringe from his other pocket. I'm sorry. They said this would be quick, that you wouldn't suffer like the others. As he moved toward my 4-line, the hospital room door exploded inward. The door splintered off its hinges as Monica Hendricks crashed through, flanked by 2 real FBI agents, their badges clearly visible, unlike the imposters who'd taken Dad. Drop the syringe, Martinez. Agent Sarah Chen, who shared my name but no relation, had her weapon trained on the doctor while her partner covered the window. Dr. Martinez's hand froze inches from my fore. But Emma, my daughter, is safe, Monica said, breathing hard. We extracted her from the warehouse 20 minutes ago. The whole kidnapping was staged with photos and deepfake videos. Your daughter's been in protective custody since yesterday. The syringe clattered to the floor as Dr. Martinez collapsed into the chair, sobbing. They showed me live video feeds. She was begging for her life. Digital manipulation, Agent Chen explained, keeping her weapon ready while her partner secured the room. The same people who've been impersonating federal agents have access to Hollywood-level special effects technology. Monica moved to my bedside, her face grim. Sarah, the real story is worse than I told you on the phone. Your grandfather didn't just develop theoretical frameworks for targeted poisons, he developed the antidotes too. The formula is hidden in your trust fund documentation, encrypted in what looks like routine legal language. Detective Rodriguez lowered his weapon but stayed alert. So this whole thing was about getting access to her inheritance? Not the money, the knowledge. Your grandfather embedded the chemical formulas in the trust's legal code because he knew someone would eventually try to weaponize his research. He made sure only you could access the antidote information. Monica pulled out a tablet, showing me pages of dense legal text. Every whereas and heretofore in your trust documents is actually a molecular structure. Agent Chen's radio crackled. We have David Chen in custody. Real custody this time. The imposters were private military contractors working for Meridian Pharmaceuticals. My heart hammered against my ribs. Where's my father now? Federal courthouse, singing like a canary about his corporate employers. Turns out he kept detailed records of every transaction, every test subject, every murder, as insurance against exactly this scenario. Agent Chen almost smiled. He's looking at 25 to life, but his testimony will bring down the entire network. Dr. Martinez looked up from his hands. What about Emma? Can I see her? She's waiting in the lobby, Monica said gently. Along with about 6 federal marshals who are very interested in your cooperation with this investigation. Through the window, I could see police cars surrounding the white van, their occupants being loaded into separate vehicles. The fire in the East Wing had been extinguished, another piece of theater in an elaborate production designed to isolate and kill me. Monica, I said, the lab mix-up that started all this, was any of it real? She shook her head. I've been undercover in your father's operation for 8 months, documenting everything. When I saw your arsenic levels, I knew he was accelerating the timeline. The mix-up was the only way I could alert Dr. Martinez without blowing my cover. But Dr. Martinez was working for them too. Under duress, and he didn't know I was federal. His genuine concern for your health actually helped sell the deception to your father. Monica closed her tablet. The phone calls, the fake medical consultations, we needed your father to believe his plan was working while we gathered evidence. Agent Chen checked her watch. Sarah, we need you to testify before a grand jury next week. With your testimony and your father's cooperation, we can dismantle the largest pharmaceutical terrorism network in U.S. history. 6 months later, I stood in a courtroom watching my father sentenced to life in prison without parole. 12 other defendants received similar sentences, including the Meridian Pharmaceuticals executives who'd funded the entire operation. The lab mix-up that started everything had saved more than just my life, it had exposed a conspiracy that would have killed thousands. I never did open that art studio, but I found something better, purpose in helping other families whose loved ones had been secretly murdered in the name of pharmaceutical research. Sometimes the worst mistakes turn out to be the most necessary truths.